We are in Taanit, 4th chapter, 3rd Mishnah. Our Mishnah is the continuation. Mishnatenu המשך המשנה הקודמת. The Mishnah is the continuation of the previous Mishnah. והיא מוסיפה ללמד, it continues to teach us, כיצד היו נוהגים אנשי המעמד. How was the behavior of the people of the shift? The people of the shift were representative for the Jewish nation that used to stand on the sacrifices that belong to the entire nation. There were certain sacrifices, too, that was brought every day, that every Jew paid for it. So they were the representative of the Jewish nation over there. Okay. So every week there used to be another group of people that was their job to represent the Jewish people by the sacrifice. So a whole week they had a different type of prayer, let's call it. They did extra prayer, these people of the Ma'amad. Also, on the week that they had, אנשי המעמד, the people of the Ma'amad, היו מתענים 4 ימים בשבוע. They would fast 4 days during that week.
I thought it was a holiday for them.
Yeah, but a holiday that you fast. A celebration of some fasting. They had to prepare themselves spiritually. You know, how do you prepare yourself spiritually? By fasting. מיום שני ועד יום חמישי. From Monday until Thursday. But not like 24-hour fast, like the Ramadan, 12-hour fast. Yeah, a 12-hour fast. So from Monday to Thursday, every day was a fast. ולא היו מתענים ערב שבת. They wouldn't fast on the Friday, מפני כבוד השבת, because of to honor Shabbat. You're supposed to enter Shabbat not in a fast. שלא ייכנסו לשבת כשהם רעבים. That they shouldn't enter Shabbat when they're hungry. ולא באחד בשבת. Also, they didn't fast on Sunday. כדי שלא יצאו ממנוחה ועונג, so that they're not going to come out from rest to pleasure, rest and pleasure on Shabbos, ליגיעה ותענית, to hard work and to fasting, וימותו, and they would die. We will see what if they would die means literally or not. במשנה שבירושלמי אין גורסים כל אותו פסקה. In the Yerushalmi we don't say that entire verse. מין ואנשי מעמד עד וימותו. From the people of the מעמד until they would die. ומכאן ואילך מבארת משנתנו כיצד היו קוראים כל יום במעשה בראשית. From here onwards, the Mishnah is going to teach us how did they read every day exactly what was the Torah reading. Let me just explain the Veyamutu. It explains it in other places. What does it mean in Veyamutu? Since on Shabbat you get an extra soul, so the person is extremely uplifted, and the next day...
An extra soul?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Let's go it easier. The soul gets elevated. Okay, let's make it easier. The soul gets elevated on Shabbat, and immediately after you go into a fast, spiritually it makes the person a lot of depressed. Vayamutu, and they would die, doesn't mean they would really die. It would mean not only the first soul goes away, even the soul that exists by a regular person now becomes weakened. So you can do one go away, it's okay, but both of them now becomes weakened because of the fast. That's too much. This is the idea behind it, Vayamutu. Not that they will...
That's why the Sfaradim, they sit in the Havdalah. So they're not going to fall down when they do the Havdalah.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. So let's see what they would read. So we say those people had a special reading of the Torah that they would read, different than everybody else. ביום הראשון, on the first day, היו קוראים, they would read from Bereshit, from the beginning, in the beginning, and ויהי רקיע, until ויהי רקיע, until God forms the heavens. So that's what they would read on the first day. היינו שתי הפרשיות הראשונות מפסוק א' עד ח'. If you look in the Torah, it's from verse א' to verse 8. בשני, ביום השני, in the second day, you would start from the verse יהי רקיע, In other words, you would redo it. You would redo that verse, and until you go to until Vayikavu Hamayim, and you will go until the oceans were created, were put together. Now, where else do we reread a verse, if you notice? In Simchat Torah we do because we have to have an aliyas, but you don't have to. Sometimes we have to. In Rosh Chodesh. If you remember, in the Rosh Chodesh reading, we read the verses and then we repeat some of the verses for the second aliyah, for the Levi. Yeah? Yeah. ויקבעו המים, שחוזר על הפרשה השנייה, that he returns on he repeats the second portion, או מוסיף לקרוא את הפרשה השלישית, and he continues to read the third portion, מפסוק ו' עד י"ג, from verse 6 until verse 13. בשלישי, on the third day, again he repeats יקבעו המים, and he goes all the way to ויהי המאורות, and he goes all the way to let there be luminaries in the sky. In other words, from verse 10 from verse 9 until verse 19. ברביעי יהיו מאורות וישרצו המים, מפסוק י"ד עד כ"ג, then from let there be lights in the heaven, and until there's going to be animals in the water. This is verse 14 to verse 23. בחמישי ישרצו המים ותוצא הארץ. On the fifth day, from the fish in the sea until the earth grew the vegetation. So this is verse 20 until verse 31. בשישי תוצא הארץ. In the sixth day, again you repeat the vegetation from verse 24 until verse 31, and then you read also ויחולו השמיים, and the heavens were finished, which is the second chapter, verses 1 to 3. Okay? So far so good. There's another rule that one needs to know when one reads the Torah. The other rule is that you are required to read at least 3 verses for an Olela Torah. Every time somebody goes up to the Torah, it's a minimum he has to read 3 verses. So we're going to see that's going to be problematic right now. Parasha Gdola. So all these portions that we just say that a person has to read, if it's a big portion, which means it has a lot of verses, שיש בה יותר משלושה פסוקים, it means that it has more than 3 verses, קוראים אותה בשניים. You read, 2 people read it. In other words, if there's more than 3 verses, 2 people would read it. בשני אנשים.
So every 3 verses they have an aliyah?
Yeah, almost. You see soon. Yeah. והקטנה, פרשה קטנה, and if it's a small verse, it's a small portion, then ביחיד, only one person gets an aliyah. כלומר, which means, ששלושה אנשים עולים לקרות בתורה כל יום. 3 people go out to the Torah every day. Like we know, Kohen Levi in Israel. Kohen Levi in Israel get up the portion. וההלכה היא, and the law היא, שאין אדם קורא פחות משלושה פסוקים. Each person needs to read at least 3 verses. ולכן בפרשה הראשונה שיש בה 5 פסוקים, and therefore in the first portion, that the first portion happened to have 5 verses, ראשון קורא 3 פסוקים, the Kohen gets the first 3, השני, the second, it's only 1 portion now. So what will the second read?
You have 2 psukim.
Yeah, and you have 2. So,
He go back.
השני חוזר וקורא פסוק שלישי שקרא. So the second one, the Levi, goes back from this, instead of, it starts from the 4th verse, 4th and 5, that only he gets, he goes 3, 4, and 5. So he repeats the last verse of the Kohen. השני חוזר וקורא פסוק שלישי שקרא הראשון. He rereads the 3rd verse that the first one read. הוא משלים את הפרשה, and he continues the whole פרשה. והשלישי קורא פרשת ירקיע, and the 3rd one reads the parasha of when God created the sky, שיש 3 פסוקים, that is a small one, it's only 3 verses. ביום השני, in the second day, קורא פרשת ירקיע, he does the same thing, he reads the portion about the heavens, ושני ושלישי קוראים פרשת יקבעו המים. And the second and the 3rd one, because it's only 3 verses. The second and the third one, it's like 5 verses, again, or 6 verses, they do this trick. If there's not enough verses, they repeat. Yeah. בשחרית ובמוסף, in שחרית and in מוסף, כלומר, which means, קריאה זו מתוך ספר תורה, הייתה בתפילת שחרית. You would read, this reading would be like us, like we read on Mondays and Thursday or Shabbos, it will be immediately be after 18. וכן במוסף, and also in Musaf, they would reread the Torah, right? Not just in Shachris. Yeah, we don't do Musaf reading. The Anshay Mamadot had another reading for Musaf. They would do it twice. Just like we do in Rosh Chodesh, in a fast day, you would have Shachris and Mincha. Yeah, in both on Shabbos. We do Shabbos, Shachris and Mincha. They didn't do Mincha, they did Musaf. Okay? וכן במוסף. אם אירע בהם יום שיש בו קורבן מוסף. In Musaf, as long as there was a Musaf davening. If there wasn't Musaf davening, if there wasn't a sacrifice for Musaf, then they wouldn't read the Torah. But if it was a day on that week that there was Musaf, then they would read the Torah. On that part, on the Musaf part.
So they wouldn't do Musaf usually?
No, they wouldn't do usually Muncha unless it was a day.
It's a holiday of Musaf.
Yeah, unless it was a holiday of Musaf. Yeah, and we're going to see that it's going to get complicated. I just remember this from the Gemara. I don't know if he's going to talk about it, but the whole thing is going to get complicated. This whole Mishnayos, I remember it from the Gemara, there's a whole debate. Are we talking about only on the people in Yerushalayim? Are we talking about everybody? Are we talking about just this one and not this one? I don't remember the whole details, but we're just learning it in general over here. Okay? ובמנחה, and what about מנחה? אבל במנחה אין מביאים ספר תורה. In מנחה, we don't bring the ספר תורה. In other words, we're going to see, there's going to be reading, but without a sefer Torah. Yeah, it's going to be strange. You don't bring the sefer Torah. Why? מפני Torah Taanit. Because people are hungry. They want to go home. They want to finish. It's like this. Now you're going to give them a reading another 15 minutes. See, when you are declaring a fast or inconvenience over the community, you have to have a good reason. If you don't have a good reason, don't inconvenience the community. We don't inconvenience community, a large amount of people. You can inconvenience. You want to get inconvenience, but don't make everybody else inconvenient. So in Mincha, it's already an inconvenience. We don't read it. They don't read it. So what did they do? Nichnasin, they go into the shul, לבית הכנסת, וקוראים על פיהן. And what do? They read it by heart. They read it by heart. You just say the verses. וקוראים את הקריאת היום בעל פה. Just like what? כקוראים את שמע. Just like you read the שמע. כדרך שקוראים את פרשת שמע על פה. Just like you do the שמע by heart. Yeah? You don't, in other words, don't convince everybody. Everybody, by the way, you don't have to see, today, it's easy. You just open up a Chumash. In those days, there was no Chumash. The Chumash was the Sefer Torah. Yeah? So he says, you don't, and we just said, you don't take out the Sefer Torah. So, and even, so that's what it means. So,
everybody had it memorized back then too.
Yeah, and because it wasn't written down, there's not enough books. Yeah, people had it memorized. So in our days, it says you read it from the Chumash, without the blessings, everybody reads to himself those verses. Right? That's what it means. Erev Shabbat b'mincha, if it was a Friday night, mincha, לא היו נכנסים לבית הכנסת, they wouldn't go to shul, לא לתפילה ולא לקריאה. Not to pray and not to read these verses. Why? You have to prepare for Shabbat. Yeah. Again, you have to remember the time. Why do we daven today? Because there was no sacrifices. Over there were sacrifices. So if you bring the sacrifice, now there's no time for davening. Yeah, right? And again, that's why it becomes complicated. Now you're going to ask, and what about the guys who are not in the temple? Do they have to? Do they have to? They don't have to. I think once these ones don't, these ones also don't. Yeah, but I don't remember the entire process. That's why I say it's complicated. Who is exactly is he talking about? Is he talking about only the guys in Yerushalayim? Does he talk about the ones who left behind also? I'm not quite sure. מפני כבוד השבת, כדי שיוכלו לעסוק בהכנת צרכי השבת. In other words, because you need to prepare for Shabbat itself. Again, you don't want extra things to do. It's enough the sacrifices.